One of the why these companies have so many problems is just their hiring process and culture. They don't speak to it during the interview process. They kind of speak to like job tasks, right? Most of the time. And they don't play in like culturally, would this person be a good fit? And I think that's where most people struggle is their lack of HR systems. Because I'm sure you've seen online, and you could even check, thousands of people apply for these jobs, right? And only 3 are selected, And so it's kind of like, I think corporate America has a problem of just their hiring process at whole, which kind of turns off some people. So I think that's one of their biggest challenges.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about how to develop the skills of outstanding leadership, why that matters in today's market more than ever. But you want to make sure that you tune in today because our special guest is Tim Madden. He is the co-founder of Executive Career Upgrades. He's number 512 on the Inc. list. And today we talk about outstanding leadership. He's really passionate. He brings many years of military leadership, I think 23 to be exact. And he shares with you how he sees people developing and growing and what gets in the way, the blind spots, if you will, of leadership that people aren't even aware of. All that packed in today's episode. My name is Gene Hammett. I am an executive coach. We coach executives. We also coach managers, and in between there to really close those skill gaps and the leadership skills that are necessary to be leaders that your team deserves, and to develop the team around you as you empower them, as you trust them, and as you scale your business. We have a tool that we use called the Leadership Effectiveness Evaluation that is really something I think special. It's personalized and customized to you. We get on a call. We go through the 7 dials of leadership. We codify that for your company. You'll find it valuable because you'll be able to create a prioritized plan for what to move next on within your culture and your leadership. And it really is dialed in for you. You can take that plan and run with it, or you can engage our team to help you, but it's absolutely free. If you're listening to this podcast, just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today. Tell us you heard about it on the podcast, and you'll get that for absolutely no cost. And that leadership effectiveness evaluation will give you clarity and confidence to execute and build the team that you know that you want. Now, here's the interview with Tim. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing great.
We're going to have a great conversation about outstanding leadership. I know you're fired up about this. Before we get into that, tell us about your company, Executive Career Upgrades.
Yeah, so we help directors, VPs, and executives in corporate America land their next position. But not only do we do that, that's probably what we're primarily known for, is we work with individuals, targeting roles 150K all the way to 7 figures, and give them the tactics and strategies they need to, get on interviews, be successful on those interviews, look at their next career move. So that's what we help them with. And then after that, if they need more assistance, because coming in as a VP or a COO of a mid to large size company comes with a lot of, anxiety, stress, etc. And most people don't have a plan when they start their new role. So we have, in some cases, we'll help them with their first 100-day plan or, other things related to their career.
Tim, I know things are shifting, at least for my clients and for what I've seen around the importance of, or the availability of talented people. Where do you see the market over the next 3 years?
If you're branded well, if you have great skills, if you know how to communicate, you'll never go without purposeful work. The problem is they don't teach this anywhere, right? That's one of the problems with corporate America too, as opposed to, I'm a military officer. I did 23 years in the US Army. And here's what happens in the military. When you get promoted, you're mandated to go to a school, period, end of story. So you have that continual training, which is locked in, right? In corporate America, if you're a senior manager, director, VP, when you get promoted, they don't give you anything else. Now, the big companies out there hopefully invest into leadership programs like yours, right? But if they don't, how are you going to have no better knowledge, kind of just on the job training throughout your career? And that's when you get to those higher levels, there's probably a lot of anxiety with it, right?
We're going to talk about outstanding leadership. And I know you probably bring a lot of military leadership skills And I know it's different in the business world. I actually coach people who have to unlearn military leadership. From your perspective, what are the top couple of things that you have to unlearn from military leadership to the business world today?
Great question. And I don't really, truly, I don't think there's anything. Now, if you ask me in 1990, totally different army, 2000, totally different army. But if you're saying in 2023, nothing. The good thing about the military is they have lots of programs in there. Now they're teaching about, it's called resiliency. It's really a how to manage your thoughts, etc. But it is a brilliant, whoever made that program, brilliant program. So I really do think the military does a good job. Now, I would say one of the downfalls is this. When I was coming out of the military, I thought I'd go into a company and people would be professionals and everything would be structured so much better. Boy, was I mistaken. The military is really leaps and bounds across other people and businesses because of standard operating procedures and just overall structure. So when I came from that environment to my first job as a director of operations for, kind of a large staffing establishment, one of the first challenges were people couldn't even, I took over an office, people had like attendance problems. I had never dealt with this before because in the military, if you don't show up, your boss comes to your door and says, what's going on? Or they call the MPs. So, it's just, but I don't really do think there's a lot of difference. I really don't. Besides, you're going to have kind of lack of structure. You're going to kind of lose that purpose and that culture that the military is on. So I just think like, it's nothing with their skill set and it's all having to do with their environment.
Now, I know that Tim said he didn't think there was anything you need to unlearn, but I've worked with a lot of military leaders. And here's a couple of things that come up quite often. You've got to learn that authoritarian leadership isn't working the same way inside of business. Telling people what to do doesn't work as much. You have to learn to listen. You have to learn to be patient. You have to learn to be calm. And those things are really different than in the military world. And I want to remind you of that because that's just my perspective of working with different people. Everyone's at different ranges and they have different struggles. We're all overcoming them. Unlearning these things are just a part of the journey of people making that transition from one level to another or one place to another. And that's my 2 cents on that whole question. Back to Tim. Tim, you have a lot of experience of helping leaders be positioned for jobs. What do you wish that employers that are trying to attract these people knew about leadership and getting the right person on board?
Great question. One of the why these companies have so many problems is just their hiring process and culture. They don't speak to it during the interview process. They kind of speak to like job tasks, right? Most of the time. And they don't play in like culturally, would this person be a good fit? And I think that's where most people struggle is their lack of HR systems. Because I'm sure you've seen online, and you could even check, thousands of people apply for these jobs, right? And only 3 are selected, And so it's kind of like, I think corporate America has a problem of just their hiring process at whole, which kind of turns off some people. So I think that's one of their biggest challenges.
Outstanding leadership. If you're sitting down with a candidate you're going to put in front of one of your best clients, how are you assessing and really kind of measuring their own leadership skills and experience?
Great question. I can't think of the author right now. I'd have to Google it. But there's a guy who essentially wrote a book, Lou Adler. He's amazing. He is the hiring guy. So he came up with a philosophy, if you will, called performance-based hiring. So what we do here is when we're hiring people, we have a metric system. So we have already analyzed all of the important questions that we need this person to do from multiple aspects, from a leadership aspect, from a job domain aspect, making sure they have the experience, and from a cultural aspect. Then we simply rate them 1 to 5 to try to be as non-biased as possible. So everyone is streamlined with the same interview. We hit the key parts. So that's what we typically do, and we've been pretty successful. It did take a tremendous long time to really dive into what's important to us here. What do we want these people to have in these certain areas? And how are we going to collect a grading scheme? I think here's what happens. And the crazy part is I coach directors, VPs, and executives. I've asked multiple times through my time doing this, raise your hand if you have been formally taught by somebody how to actually interview somebody else. There was 100 people on this call, 2 people raised their hand. So what people in corporate America, I think, lose sometimes is there is a process for everything in life. There is a process to hire people. There is a process to get in shape, to have nutrition, to be financially sound. Unfortunately, people don't typically make process. They kind of just give the job description to HR, and that's where the disconnect is.
We're still talking about outstanding leadership. And I want to ask you, and if it's your secret question, don't share it with us. But if you're okay sharing it, what's your favorite interview question about leadership?
Good one. Favorite interview question. Well, I'm trying to not to do the general, if you ever had to let go of I can't think of my favorite off the top of my head, but here's what we use in our first 100-day program. We have some kind of check on learnings, but some assessments as well, because we had actually had this happen last year. And the scenario is, hey, you're a VP for a company. It's your first day. You've hardly met all of your staff, and your boss comes up to you, and all he says is, you need to let John go today. He's of this. And that's all he says. What do you specifically do now?
Wow. That would be a really tough way to do this. It's the first day to let someone go.
And it happened. Exactly.
It's a good way to see how they think on their feet. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Tim, we could talk about a lot of different things. I'm curious about you as a leader. Has there been a mistake in your journey of leadership that allows you to think differently about leadership?
Good question. And it happened recently here at ECU. We actually, one of the biggest mistakes, here's the thing. I mean, there's many. One that comes to mind right now, and I think a lot of companies do this, is they onboard people, right, without truly onboarding them. So what's happened before, when I was initially hiring people here, I'd kind of do some on-the-job training, probably like most of America does, right? And rolling into this. But the challenge is that sucks up all of your time, right? So what we basically had to do was sit down and do a extensive onboarding program, right, for all of the positions here, because here's why. When people are onboarded, they don't get we have a video training course that is required for them to go to. Because here's what's happened. The challenge is when you bring on more people, you have to stop everything and train that person. Right. And if you're scaling quickly, what happens? You and your team can only do so much because you're sustaining the current operation. So one of the biggest challenges we've had, and actually probably lost some good talent, both on the leadership side and the non-leadership side, of just not having an effective onboarding program that says, here's who we are. Here's what we stand for. Here's what's expected of you. Here's every single task you're going to have to do. Here's exactly the way we need to do it. What are your questions? Right. And we didn't develop that until recently. So one of the biggest challenges was, if you're in growth mode, you got to hire lots of people. The challenge is, if you're in growth mode, you better have a really good HR process. Otherwise, you're going to have mass confusion. So I'd say that's one of the leadership dilemmas that I've had to deal with. So that's pretty challenging when you're trying to onboard lots of people, departments.
I agree with Tim about onboarding. We don't take the time to personalize it and really create a sense of connection. He talked about some of the important aspects of that, of sharing the company's reasons for why, the purpose and the values of the company. Absolutely believe in that. Here's a special little treat for you. And it actually is called the special treat question, if you will, because in the hiring process, if you ask someone, how would you reward yourself with a guilty pleasure or special treat that's less than $20? Let's say they say homemade chocolate chip cookies, or they say Rice Krispie treats or something like that. Maybe it's a special protein bar that they really love. Well, you write that down. You write down the specific brand, ask them what flavor they want of that. Make it really personalized for them. And if you do end up hiring that person, on the day that they come on board, you have a box of 10 of those, or 20, or whatever it is, or maybe it's a homemade box of Rice Krispie treats or chocolate chip cookies, whatever it is. Give them that and maybe make it a conversation. Hey, we want you to enjoy these personalized treats for you. You told us that, but also personalize the experience you have for your team, and really take care to listen and do the things that you're talking about. Use it as a way to listen, but also use it to carry forward. Hopefully you'll be able to use that again as they do something well, and you can reward them with that special treat. Just a little way to make things a little special in the onboarding process and after they've been with you for a while. back to Tim. Tim, there's skills to leadership. It is something that we can learn over time, and being a high performer, make that transition, because you talked about working with senior managers and directors. They're typically high performers and they have to become leaders. They have to develop other people. What are the skills you're looking for with the candidates so that you know that your clients get the right person?
Yeah. So the biggest one, and I love it because we talked about it before we started the podcast, and you use the same language that I use. Who do you need to become? I love that. That's what we say all the time as well. Meaning, say you are a director and you're going for a senior director or a VP role, to really just sit down and say, hey, you manage these people, this budget, this area. If you were get to promoted to this, right, to this next level, right, who do you need to become? Meaning, how do you think a successful person in that role operates? What do you think they do on a daily basis? Do you think they invest in their own self-development? And I love it because people typically have epiphanies during this time. And they're like, you're right, to move up, I need to do ABC, right? So I think the important thing is like, hey, who do you need to become to get to that position up there? What do you think that person does all day? Do you think they sit and complain? Do you think they not get up? Do you, right? So, and then to map out a plan specific to you. But the other thing is, hey, I only want to work with people that want to get better at life. And that's with our team and our clients, right? So we put self-development as so huge because there's only one thing you can control. You can't control the market, right? You can't control what everyone else does, but you can control yourself and your own mind. And I think a lot of people struggle there for multiple reasons. Number one, they don't have clear goals. And then they wonder why their life's kind of a wreck, or their career's a wreck, or their business is a wreck.
I'm curious about blind spots. Blind spots are those things that we don't know that they're problems because maybe someone didn't share it with us, or that we've developed them and no one's willing to address them in a way. What blind spots do you see leaders having as they go in and you want to prepare them for these roles?
Yeah. So essentially it's kind of, you don't know what you don't know, right? So there's stuff you know. There's stuff you know that you don't know or haven't got the knowledge yet, or you have the knowledge and just simply haven't taken the action. And there's things that you don't know you don't know. What I typically recommend in this from, say, a leadership standpoint inside of a business is that's why we're very big on performance like 360 counseling, right? And the 360 counseling is you are the leader. If you've been there for 90 days, let's get feedback from everybody. And let's try to tell our team, our cross-functional team, and our leadership that we're really looking for candid feedback, right? Because so many people say, oh, you're doing great. We love you. You're not doing anything wrong. Because I feel like people don't like delivering bad news. We talked about this before the podcast too, tough decisions, etc. It's uncomfortable. What people don't realize is if you overcome those uncomfortable situations, that builds confidence. But they get stuck there. But from the Performance 360 to go in and be like, hey, team, I want to manage these areas, and I'd like for you all to rate me because I'm trying to get better as a leader. And we've coined a phrase like success needs support. And sometimes it's not support from, out there. You have to get mentors. I would highly recommend that. But sometimes you can just get phenomenal feedback from your team, your cross-functional teams, and your leadership just by, putting something together on a Google Doc and saying, hey, would you kind of rate me in these areas? That's one way to get feedback, because sometimes your team probably hasn't brought up multiple things to you. Your boss probably hasn't. And so is those cross-functional teams. So I'd say that'd probably be a really good place to start.
You've been talking about the importance of personal development. And I want to get really specific here. If you had someone that maybe they didn't get the job that they really wanted to have, and they're saying, what's the feedback I have? And this is our last question today. So just take a moment to explain what you really mean by personal development for those that are trying to get better in their work and in their own their own confidence, if you will.
Yep. So what I really mean is if you're new or you've been doing it for a while, hey, seek out first international best-selling books on leadership, communication, and whatever your domain is. So whether that's sales, marketing, or whatever, right? And I would devote 20 minutes at least per day on consuming information. Well, let me say 4. How to have a positive mindset. Let's add that as well. Positive mindset and the rest I mentioned. Because you get what you put your attention on. So many people don't realize this. You get what you put your attention on. If I'm putting my attention on getting in shape, I'm going to get in shape. Eating right, I'm going to eat right. If I'm putting my attention on getting better just overall as a human being from a mindset perspective, from communicating more clearly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's going to happen because you get what you put your attention on. I think, that's why everyone struggles with goal setting. They don't take the time to sit down and just do a self-assessment on yourself, right? How am I doing in business right now? Right? Before the Performance 360, what are some areas that I absolutely know I can improve in? And sometimes it's not always effective communication. It could be something around process, developing good standard operating procedures, et cetera. Right? But it's one of those things of you have to learn new information. We're in school for 18 years. 18? No. Well, 12 years, you get your degree or whatever. Let's say everyone's there for 12 years if you go to college, 16 or 18. But that's when people stop. The crazy thing is when we bring people on to work with them, likely the last investment they've ever made in themselves, to include a $20 book, is when they paid for their MBA or a bachelor's degree. Or one time the company paid for a leadership and development retreat. And we're like, okay, you've done this over 20 years. You haven't had any mentors. You haven't gathered new information. You fumbled through the whole time. Do you think that's how successful people did it? Or do you think successful people hooked up with other people that already knew the information, right? There's this podcast I follow, a guy named Brad Lee, and he always says, I love the theme of his podcast. He says, we're trying to get the information from the people who have it to the people who need it. And I'm like, yes, I love that. Because the reality is getting better at life is the easiest and most difficult thing you can do, because everyone has 20 minutes a day. And there's even a study out there that says if you even listen to an Audible book just driving to work or for 20 minutes a day, if you do that for a year, you literally have the equivalent of an MBA. So do that for 3-4 years. And, all of these people at the top in corporate America, this too, I assure you, most people don't. They are avid readers. They are in mentorships. They are in masterminds. They hook up with other people. There is no way you can get to the CEO of Microsoft by stumbling your way. It's not going to happen. And I think people are lucky when it's really just they have put in the time to develop their leadership, develop their communication, develop these other areas of their job expertise, which has allowed them to move up the chart. So have you done that for the past couple of years? I think the consensus will typically be no. And then, they want some type of quick fix too. Right? Like if you've been in corporate America for 20 years, right? Will an 8-week leadership and development program help? Absolutely it would. But think about this. For 20 years, you haven't done anything. And now we're going to do something for 8 weeks. So I think that's why a lot of people kind of struggle with that.
Tim, thank you so much for being here, sharing your wisdom and sharing your thoughts on outstanding leadership.
Thanks for having me.
Tim rocked it here today. He talked about assessing yourself. I want you to think about this. I don't know if you're a sports fan or not, but all of the sports athletes that are playing at their greatest level are looking at the game film in their life, and they are assessing how they performed, being honest with themselves. Are you willing to do that for yourself? If you want to be an outstanding leader, have outstanding leadership skills, you want to make sure you're looking at the game film of your own life. Are you listening well enough? Are you growing in that aspect? Are you present? Are you on time? Are you empowering people the right way? There's many aspects to it. In fact, we have a leadership effectiveness evaluation. If you're curious about that, just go to ghammett.com and schedule your call today. When you think about growth and you think about leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, live with courage. We'll see you next time.